Hello and welcome to Davos, where we have with us the most admired person on the planet, Bill Gates. So how does it feel, first of all, to end up on that list? And I think lots of people from India are voting for you as well, and you're there with Sachin Tendulkar, which takes some doing for Indians.
Well, it's a very nice thing. I think the most admired people probably should be somebody who's working in health in some poor country, but they're not going to be visible. No, I don't give up my my life and work in tough places. So there's a lot of obscure heroes, but it was a real honor.
Right. Your letters also come out, the letter which you and Melinda bring out, and every year it's insightful, and this year, once again, it was. And I just wanted to begin by taking up some of the themes that you had in that letter. You're saying that there's too much pessimism about the state of the world and the state of the poor and the poor countries in particular. And you seem to be saying that there's been no time in history when the world's been as well off as it is today.
Yeah, I'm amazed when they poll people about how we're doing on developing the countries of the world, moving people up from low to middle income to high income. People aren't aware of the progress. They mostly see headlines about setbacks, and there's really no opportunity for this gradual progress, day by day, year by year, where the economies, the nutrition, the survival rates of virtually every country have been going up. People read about a war. That's of course a huge setback. They should read about it. But we also need to let them know that most people now are in middle-income countries. Mexico, Brazil, China. India defies simple classification because, of course, it's got a range of different income levels in different parts of it. But the improvement there is also very exciting.
So would it be your assessment that at the end of the day, if you look at the world as a whole, trickle-down has worked, free market economies, countries doing better, people doing better, industrialists doing better, but at the end of the day, it has gone down to the poor as well?
Well, I wouldn't call it trickle-down because I'm the biggest believer that rich country aid budgets and philanthropic giving need to very directly address the needs of the poorest. Something like a malaria vaccine will never get done under trickle-down because the rich countries managed to get rid of malaria. We have to explicitly do that for the children of Africa, coming up with a toilet design that's less expensive. We can't just take what the rich world did, which involves all this piped water. So the trend over time is very positive, and we ought to see where things have gone well and kind of double our investment in those areas. My prediction is that within 20 years, we'll have very few low-income countries. It'll be, maybe North Korea, some of the landlocked African countries, but a dramatic reduction to get most countries so they're self-sufficient.
In fact, you mentioned in your letter 2035. That's a time when there'll be virtually no poor countries in the world, and that's a rather startling finding.
Yeah, when I was born, there were a few rich countries, and almost everybody else was poor. In fact, then the world was kind of in two places, poor and rich, and not much in the middle. Now it's mostly in the middle, as it should be.
And obviously what happens in countries like India and China, therefore, are really, really crucial. In India, perhaps one of the biggest swing countries, if you like, over the next 20 years. You have to take so many more millions of people out of poverty. How do you think India is doing on that front, just out of curiosity?
Well, India doing a lot of things right and a lot of things it could do way better. The health budget's gone up. It needs to go up a lot more to really make sure those places are well staffed, the workers are there, the supplies are there. But we have seen really good progress. The National Rural Health Mission has gotten some money up, particularly up into the north. If you look at vaccination rates in a state like Bihar, they were abysmal. Now they're actually pretty good and continued work to drive those up. One of the wonderful things is that all the workers who helped out with the polio eradication, they're continuing to make sure polio doesn't come back, but they're also now taking their time and making sure that routine immunization is done better. And they're finding out for us, why don't families go in? When are the workers not there? When is the vaccine not there? And so they're helping to tune up the whole immunization system, which that's going to mean a lot more children surviving.
Right, and that was a big victory actually, the fact that India is polio-free now 3 years running, and new vaccines are continuing to come. There was some talk of a new 5-part vaccine which will be done. So the war against disease in India, you think, is doing as well as could be expected right now, or a lot more scope to go?
Well, I'm impatient, but less Indian children are dying every year as vaccine coverage goes up and we get new vaccines in. Now, there's a few that are not in the package yet, one against diarrhea called rotavirus, one against a respiratory disease called pneumococcus. Those need to get in so we can save even more lives. We need to get the coverage up, ideally to 100%. But we can see the progress, and there's a lot of great partnerships. We're certainly, the Ministry of Health is helping to drive this work forward.
We are, of course, heading for a big election in India, and would you like to see that issues like health and education and some of these perhaps should be more in the forefront, and maybe political parties can be urged to, that should be what you should be campaigning on?
Yeah, I'd
water,
love
sanitation.
to see competition based on who ran the primary health care system the best, who wants to be the most generous, who wants to make sure that it's operating very well. We've seen this somewhat at the state level. I mean, I think, when Nitish Kumar was reelected in Bihar, I think part of that was because health had gone up a bit, crime had also gone down. So that's an election on competence, not sort of my group versus your group, but rather, hey, run the government well for all of us, particularly those most in need. And I think we'll hopefully see some of that in the debates, which party would do the most for health. That's when democracy is really at its finest.
And I think you make a good point, because that's starting to happen. People are winning elections in India on the basis of the governance they do and how well they can deliver to the grassroots. So from fighting elections on caste or religion, if this starts to happen, it's potentially good news. Well, just moving on to one of the other themes that was there in your letter, you spoke about aid and the fact that aid is still something which is really important. Countries like India now almost pride themselves on the fact that they don't need aid anymore. What would be your take on that? Should, at the end of the day, countries eventually be weaned off it, or at least for the foreseeable future, aid should be around?
Well, aid is something that you want to graduate from. It makes a lot of sense. The percentage of India's economy that comes through aid now is a tiny percentage, like 0.1%. I do think it is helpful. I think some of the measurement systems that the aid people bring in to help the government understand what's working, what's not working. I think some of the more innovative things where you're working with cell phones to track the births and make sure there's follow-up for those things. Obviously I believe in it because our foundation is very involved in some of these new things. But clearly India's on a path, you can say, is it 10 years, 12 years? It's on a path where that aid number, that percentage will drop all the way down to zero. And of course, India is raising more in taxes, and part of that's going into the health budget. The health budget, needs to go up a lot to help out the poor. So it's India taking care of India is the dominant theme here. We still have a lot of countries that are not as well off as India, and they need aid. A lot of countries in Africa cannot afford their vaccines or to pay their primary health care workers, and they're in a poverty trap unless we help with their health and agriculture. So aid often doesn't get credit for being as valuable as it is, and I'm in the letter telling the story that aid has made a huge difference.
Well, just to move on a bit, I mean, when you're at places like Davos, and everyone's right now talking to you here about vaccination and health and philanthropy, which of course they should, because you made such a massive impact. Do you sometimes miss the days when they would be asking you about business and profit and loss, and how do we get devices moving faster?
Well, technologies, these are exciting days. The top tech companies are making great advances, including Google, Microsoft, Apple, all of them. And I, follow that, part-time involved with Microsoft. My foundation work, we're taking that and in areas like education or tracking vaccine supplies, are they there or not, using the mobile phone. We have a big effort working with the Indian government to try to get digital money to be more flexible so that things like savings accounts and insurance, which have had huge fees or high interest, in the digital world, maybe those financial products will be more accessible.
Right. We've had at least one example in India with Mr. Narayan Murthy going back into the company. Do you ever feel that perhaps I could drive this better than anybody else could, or do you not have that sense of regret ever?
Well, my foundation work is my full-time focus, and that'll be the case for the rest of my life. I'm always glad to help out at Microsoft part-time, and so as they get new leadership there, I'll be very responsive to whatever the new leader asks me to help with.
Okay, now just moving to technology, because I know you're passionate about it. Any major trends that you're seeing around us in the world today in technology, which you say, this is going to change everything?
Well, one of the dreams has always been to have a computer that understood what was going on. And a key part of that is vision. Microsoft made a breakthrough about 3 years ago in something called deep learning. That's being applied by a lot of tech companies now. So vision software has improved very dramatically. So the ability of, say a device that's picking fruit or something that's trying to figure out who somebody is, or looking at a field either from a satellite or down locally and seeing what the disease is, seeing what the productivity is. Getting vision into this cloud-based, data-rich world is going to enable a lot of new applications. And so, I see this acceleration, and that's pretty exciting. Sensors, are going to find their way into health and agriculture, which are the top foundation issues.
Right. I've been hearing right here in Davos things like the brain is about to get synthesized, or they'll almost recreate parts of the brain. I've been hearing about how technology comes into healthcare, and you have parts being introduced. I've seen 3D printing and scanning, and that's where the future is going to be. Any thoughts on any of those issues?
Well, we don't understand the brain yet. So anyone who's telling you we're recreating the brain or understanding the brain someday, but there's nothing really concrete there. The health sensors, which start as sort of a hobby in the rich world, those will become variable. We're right on the edge where those things are very mainstream. More for sick patients in the developing world to track them. Over time, India's going to have a big diabetes problem already, pretty meaningful. And any tools that can help the compliance and cost of these rich world diseases are very important for the future. The vision and audio capabilities, that's really here and now. And so when people talk about software driving a car, yeah, that's cutting edge, but it's very doable now. And so we're going to be able to automate a lot of tasks. Even the progress is enough. People worry, will we be able to retrain workers fast enough as some of these jobs are tech substituted?
Well, I've been hearing also talk about the whole of manufacturing is going to change. It's all going to be technological. You'll be doing 3D printing and downloading software and printing stuff out. Have you been following that at all?
Sure. The mass manufacturing leads to very low unit costs where you cast things, either plastic or metal things. 3D printing starts out first at the prototyping stage, so the actual design work, trying things out, and for low volume things, like this company SpaceX that builds new rockets. They only need a few dozen of a part. So actually 3D printing works fantastically for that. When it comes to refrigerators, cars, it's not, the economics are not yet at the point where it'll help us make products like that. But it does keep improving, and so it'll start to affect medium volume things maybe in a decade or so.
Well, before I wrap up devices, which is something that you've also been so clearly connected with, having invented the personal computer, are you starting to see a trend which some have seen that tablets and laptops are going to start merging together, form factors are going to change, and you see a lot of that happening in the next year? Some exciting new devices, wearable tech, things on your wrist.
Well, the boundaries between devices has always been fluid. How big does a screen have to be before it's not a phone and it's a tablet? If you have a thing where you can detach a keyboard, is that a tablet or is that a PC? Yeah. And users don't want to carry too many things around and set them up and buy them. And so we have really great PC things that are moving into the tablet space, and then some people adding stuff onto tablets. So that's a pretty flexible boundary. I think one of the biggest things is going to be applications that are running on multiple devices. So when I walk into my office and there's a big screen on the wall, I can take an application and just kind of flick and it's running up there. It's touch. You can see a lot more. And even I can still use my phone and the big screen. You see that a little bit with your TV at home where you're interacting on a touch, maybe a phone or tablet, and the screen there. So with the cloud now, multi-device applications will become far more common, and building up the software tools and platform for that, Microsoft and others are investing heavily in making that a reality.
So I think we're going to head for exciting times ahead. Before I allow you to go, any immediate plans for India? When you're coming next, and what would be on your India agenda for 2014?
Well, I'll get there this fall. Getting the new vaccines rolled out, getting the coverage there, that's kind of the constant thing. Yeah. My wife, Melinda, is very focused on women having access to contraception when they need it. And the Ministry of Health has set some aggressive goals there, so we're a real partner in making that happen. I love to meet with the philanthropists in India. I think philanthropy in India is growing. There's a lot of creativity, and any support or encouragement I can provide there, I always enjoy doing that. You got a big election coming up, so I'm looking forward to getting back and seeing people there. In particular, there's a India construct, a rotavirus, a diarrheal vaccine that was invented in India. And so I'm going to trying to help anything to get that out to kids as soon as possible.
All right, Mr. Gates, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being with us.